again for taking the time to join. Again, if you'd like to turn your cameras on and join me on camera, I'll have the audio going, but you can feel free to jump on. I take about 20 minutes and then open it up for questions. We got a smaller group tonight, so we will have plenty of time for questions if you'd like to reserve and ask questions along the way. To start out, Tony Hulbert, CEO of Horsepower Brands, and my primary role is to work across all the brands and the shared service entities that we have launched to date. I spend my time a lot with our executive team and then with our brand presidents working on the strategy. We have a 10-year target of where we're trying to achieve and hit. That started in 2021, so our 10-year target is out to 2031. That all boils down to us making 3-year plans, annual targets, down to quarterly rocks, and I'll jump further into that. But for the perspective of tonight, I always like to hit on some of the initiatives that we're working through within Horsepower. We do go through greater detail of these initiatives at our confirmation day, which is the day that you would come into Omaha and learn even more about the brands, our Z services, and along with the initiatives that we're working with within Horsepower Brands. On the screen here, you can see our history and timeline of brand launches to date, along with the Z services. As you think about our growth, 2022 was our biggest year. That's when we launched the most brands and the most shared service entities. And in 2023, we did make a conscious effort to hit the pause button to let our organization catch up, both at the franchisee level, along at the franchisor level with our employers or with our employees, along with our vendors, suppliers, and all the partners within our total enterprise. Last year, we did launch Stand Strong Fencing, which was our 8th brand, and we are targeting to launch and enter into the heating and airspace with Varsity Zone by the end of Q2. So when you look at the core focus of Horsepower Brands, our purpose is to empower entrepreneurs to achieve their why. You can see on the screen, you may have heard at different intervals a concept of 25 by 2025. Well, that was an objective early on in what we were working towards within Horsepower Brands, and that's still one of the targets that we believe we will obtain. That represented 25 concepts. So that could either have been a Z service that you see on the bottom of the screen or a brand. What we're more focused upon is making sure we have the right set number of brands within our portfolio, that the franchise system's healthy within each one of those brands, and that our organization is ready to launch that next brand. Case in point, why we chose to launch Stand Strong Fencing last year, and that was the only brand, and we're launching Heating and Air this year. There is a good chance we'll launch another brand by the end of the year, but there's no guarantee to that piece. We do focus, and we believe our niche here at Horsepower Brands is to simplify business ownership. I jump into our core values as you come to our confirmation day, but I do hope as you go through the validation process and hear from our employees, hear from franchisees, hear from the rest of the leadership team, along with our founders, that you, as you can see on the screen, you are experiencing these type of values and interactions with our employees. You feel it within Horsepower. I know it sounds cliche from somebody in my seat, but it's incredibly important that these values are represented throughout our organization, that you can see, feel it through the experiences and conversations that you have with our employees. I talked about Varsity Zone. This is the next brand that we launched. The cool part about this brand launch is just how it's came to fruition. The two people on the left on the screen, Phil and Eric, happen to be our first franchisee for Mighty Dog Roofing and Horsepower. So the people that trusted in us as a franchisee early on also bought the second brand that we launched and was the first to buy that brand. And now it's very cool to see that we're coming together in this partnership within Varsity Zone. They had acquired a heating and air business, and they've been working on that business for a period of time. And being able to partner with them, it's just full circle of what we've been able to do within Horsepower, and it's very cool and very rewarding on our end. Want to remind you on this call that we do have a process for you as depending on what stage you are in your process and discovering more about Horsepower or the brand that you're looking at. What we aim to do is just offer an experience throughout this entire process to offer education to you, not just about Horsepower Brands or the brand that you're looking at, but also franchising. And what is franchising? What does that represent? We have weekly calls. You should already know this, but we do have weekly calls for franchisee validation on Tuesdays. You hear from leadership on Wednesday nights. You hear from brand teams on Thursday, along with potentially some suppliers and vendors. So 3 days every single week. We do offer lunch and learns on a Friday during the lunchtime Central Time. So throughout this entire process, we're hoping that you're gaining a lot of knowledge and understanding of what we are at Horsepower Brands, what our brand offers. But hopefully, at the end of the day, you even gain a lot of education on what franchising looks like. There is a discovery center, so if you should have been invited to this, you should have access to this. You can even go at your pace to learn even further about Horsepower Brands throughout this process without even attending the calls. You can learn about these services. You can learn about all these different steps. It is a gamification process. You unlock more videos as you go through that process. So again, if you haven't been shown this or you're unaware of it, ask your director, your advisor, hey, where's the discovery process? I haven't been invited. It should have already been automated and provided to you throughout this process. I hit on our three uniques here at Horsepower Brands and what we aim to do as a franchisor, trying to do something that we don't believe anyone else is doing. And when we add all these three uniques together, we just truly believe we're offering a product to franchisees, to entrepreneurs that is without a doubt something that no one else is doing. So our first one, and I'm not going to go into great detail on each one of these tonight, but you can feel free to ask any questions on any one of these, and I'll do my best to answer. But we wanted to design a platform to provide solutions to common business problems. And so that's why you see all these Z services. So if you're like, why is there Z Recruit, Z Book, Z Marketing, Z Partnerships? It's our belief that when you buy into a franchise, whether it's a restaurant, gym, home service, they show you of how to run that unique business. They give you that playbook, that operations manual, but they don't tell you how to do bookkeeping. They don't tell you how to do marketing, recruiting. They don't give you a training all the way through a university program, online learning, 365 days a week, 24/7. And so these elements are supposed to be layered upon what you typically would receive from another franchise or franchise brand. While we are partnering with some of these suppliers, we are trying to create a very integrated supplier relationship into our system to make sure that our supplier can scale with us and can provide the right service level for you at the franchisee level, or we own the business that you're looking at. So we do own Z Books, and the team is funnels up through our parent company. We do own Z Recruit, and that team does funnel up through our parent company. So at times we choose to own the company outright. At times we look to partner with the supplier that's in the space that can do it much better than us, can scale at a much faster pace, and has a lot more relationships and abilities than we could offer by owning it. So any questions on this, feel free tonight to ask away. Our second unique, when you look at Horsepower, is data is our strategic asset. We put a lot of effort into creating this into our DNA. It should be how we operate. And in every franchise system, they should always have some sort of data-driven DNA culture within their system. I dive further into this at a confirmation day, so I won't spend too much time tonight on it. But even what we were able to achieve in last year with 9 key KPIs to create this composite leaderboard, our targets, depending on the week that you're in your business, for the first 260 weeks, which is 5 years, 52 weeks a year, 260 weeks. We have targets for each one of these KPIs. So as you enter into opening your business, you know what week 1 and what success looks like. You know what week 40 and what success looks like, and it goes on and on and on. And we'll dive into what this looks like from a composite score. Continue to spend more time, energy into other points and components around data that I'd love to share with you as we can continue to go forward. But we consider this to be one of our uniques. The third and final unique that we consider when you bring this all together is our Howie connection. Howie is our brand that sits above all the brands. And so you may have not heard too much about Howie at this stage that you are in through this development process and working with your director or advisor, because they're working with you at the brand level specifically. And Howie is the Marriott of our brands. It's the family of brands. It's the brand that sits above all the brands. And so we can think of some of the common, most basic cross marketing efforts of how do we offer points, rewards, how do we cross market, how do we do all these different things within Howie. I'll get to that chat and that question here in a moment. Um, but that's first piece, and I break down Howie into three pillars. That's first piece. The second piece would be you think about it from a lead generation side, from a digital marketing element. How do we utilize Howie in a way in a market to accelerate customer growth? This is a long-term view, so I caution everyone on the call as we launch Howie this year. We have initiatives where franchisees will start to see Howie in their marketplace, but from a digital lens, this takes a significant investment. It takes a brand density and franchise density. We need a number of brands open in a market like Nashville, Tennessee. We also need a number of franchisees open. So it's with intent that we're launching Howie in 2024. We needed enough franchise open to make this make sense. And then going back to data is our strategic asset. Carfax, when I think about long term, so now we're even further out, but 10 years out, the amount of times we'll go to a home to gather data is going to be unbelievable amount of times. And so you think about creating the home facts that the Carfax is. So when you buy a home, you got so much more information. As we looked at heating and air, there's a saying out there that the moment you can get in the mechanical room, you now own that home. So why you see a lot of heating and air companies go into plumbing and then they go into electric. It's just it becomes a natural progression for those companies as they look to scale. Once you own the mechanical room, you own the home, you get a lot of additional opportunities. The mechanicals and having that information and those data points and being able to save that within what we are referring to as like a home fax long term, we see a huge advantage to that. At a high level, when we look at Howie, we do have 5 initiatives in 2024 that we're trying to obtain and accomplish. We do want to go digital. I can't get into the Howie house account project on this call. That's something that we dive into at confirmation day, but that's the piece that pulls it all together, all the brands under one single interface or portal or way for the consumer to go to discover more services. And we would share lots of those details. That next slide might show you a little bit of a hint of that. We're going to launch our website. We're coming on version 3 of what that's looking like, looking to launch in June of 2024. Vehicle wraps, the trade dress, as you call it, you'll start to see some hints of Howie. The important piece here, we show some of what that looks like. It's secondary market. We don't want this to overcome your brand, which is the most important. You're investing in that brand. And so we don't want to overcome that brand. This is meant to be Mighty Dog Roofing, a Howie brand. It's meant to be secondary. So as you look at the Marriott hotel chain on the outside of the building, it's Fairfield, a Marriott brand, same concept. Email campaigns, and the last point, actually, I think this last point is one of the most. It's the one that most of our franchisees. We got 6 test markets that we're talking to today, and they're most excited about Howie events. And we're coming to thinking about how do we go to a trade show together, all brands together, wrapped into one event instead of getting 10 by 10 booths in 3 different areas in that home and garden show. Can we come together and get a 30 by 30 booth? And we have 6 brands sharing, not just in the cost, so it becomes a cost savings, but just think about that experience for the homeowners walking through that home and garden show and making yourself known at a very quick pace with a Howie event booth, etc. We're also thinking about like Howie give back. How do we create a system where we can give back to the community, not just individual brands and try to execute that at a brand level, but how do we execute that at a total Howie level? So a give back a project through Howie, and we're continuing to think through and roll out what that looks like. But a lot of franchisees that are in these 6 test markets, they're all wanting to jump on and be a part of building what Howie and your local community looks like, because it also brings you together with your fellow franchisees. There's the saying of you're going into business for yourself, but not by yourself in the franchise space. Well, this adds another layer where you have this camaraderie inside your local community, and when you come together as a total system, and you have your peers that you can continue to build your market in Nashville, Dallas, Atlanta, et cetera. So that's one of the 5 initiatives, but I actually see the most excitement in that last one. And then I'll end with, you can see on the screen, if you're still paying, if you're able to see the screen, is this becomes the look from a digital lens of how does this all come together. So if you start through Mighty Dog Roofing and you're introduced to Howie online and you come into the site, now you can discover more services and you realize that Mighty Dog Roofing did a great job for you, and now you're realizing like, oh, they're a sister company or they're part of the family of Howie, and now I know who to call when I need window treatments, when I need an interior glass door, anything of that such. It continues to expand out the offerings and the ability to work together in a local market and accelerate the growth within that. So I'll end there. I know I went quick, but I want to reserve time for questions for the group. And so I'll open up the mic. I'll read the first question in the comments. Let me kind of exit out of this. So give me a second here. So I'll start with the first question in the group, and then from this point forward, if you'd like to take yourself off mute, just state your name, the market you're calling from, and the brand that you're looking at ahead of your question. Any question really is up for consideration. So feel free to ask any question along the way. I'll do my best to answer it. So Doug did ask the question of, are the Z brand companies or services that are integrated into the investments made, or are they buy up or add on services we need to pay for? And are we required to use any and or all of them? So Doug and the team here, the first part is you're not required to use all of them. Some of those Z services are added as just additional benefits. So we'll take Z Recruit. It is a service that's not required and one that you can choose to use. So when you're in the market, you need to hire a salesperson and you need another layer of advertising for that salesperson and you want to interview multiple people, you could choose to reach out to Z Recruit. We look to offer it at a very competitive price. And as you come to a confirmation day, you get to spend 90 minutes, and all the Z service brand presidents and team leads will provide an overview of every one of the Z services and give you details, even down to pricing, whether it's required or not, etc. Some of this Z services are required, and they're for the intent to make sure that you can continue to run an effective business. So Z Books is required. And the purpose for that is to make sure that you have a set of financial statements and that you are looking at your business month over month, et cetera. That's a very low cost bookkeeping option for the franchisees, and one of the ones that most of them are very happy with the service that's being provided. So that question is a good question. I don't want to go through each one of them because there's some others that are required and some others that are not. But it's a good question that you want to go back to your director and advisor to get the answer to. And it's important that you understand what each one of them does. You can also learn more about each one of them in that Discovery Center that I mentioned earlier on the call. Good question, Doug, and thanks for kicking it off.
I have a question. I guess showing that little mapping that you had for, I guess, the R journey. I just did my mapping call. I'm Steven, looking at St. Pete for Gatsby Glass. This is the first call I've been on like this, I guess.
Okay.
But I'm just curious, from your perspective, what is the culture that Horsepower is building, and what traits, talents, skills do owners possess that you see that have the most success?
That's a good question. I like it. So thanks for asking it, Stephen. And you said from St. Pete, right?
Yes.
So the culture,
Yes, sorry.
yeah, no, the culture within Horsepower, it goes back to our purpose. We want to empower entrepreneurs to achieve their why. And so we believe in entrepreneurship. We believe in franchising. We want to see more and more people be successful in owning their own business. And we believe heavily in home services space. So then it expands into our core values. And there's one slide on that, but I did go over it quickly. But it's intellectual capital, purpose, winning energy, execution, and having a backbone. And each one of those we go through. But I'll hit on a few that are important because it then tails into your other question of where does success land at the franchisee level? And so execution is one of them. In our core value, we define that as it's 1% of the vision, it's 99% of your ability to execute it. So we can all say on this call what we plan to do in running our business, what the plan is in terms of networking and representing Gatsby Glass and St. P, and what I'm going to do in my local market and what we are going to do as a franchisor. But it comes down to, at the end of the day, we want a system of people that want to go out and execute. And that starts with the franchisee who owns the business. but then it ends with that franchisee to insert that culture, that core value, and that system into his or her own business. And that's one thing that we can't do here from Omaha is creating that winning culture within your own team in St. Pete representing Gatsby Glass. And so I actually had a call with a franchisee earlier today, and they asked the same question. They asked it in a different way, like what things, where are people failing in the system? I just said, well, I'll tell you where people are winning, and it's people that do focus on the sales growth that first 12 months, those opportunities to go win each and every day. And it's hard because a lot of people are analytical in today's world, and so you got to figure out like what type of you're smiling, so maybe you, right? And so am I. I'm a past CPA. But the first 12 months, I go to, there's 3 rules in business, first 12 months. Rule number one, focus on the service that you provide to your customer and make it the absolute best, not just in St. Pete, in the world. Make it the absolute best and always focus on it. So if it's not you talking to the customer, then make sure that your employee knows how to make it better each and every day. Number two is grow revenue. And so every activity that you wake up each and every day, those first 12 months as a business owner, whether you're in the sales function role or not, I believe should have a revenue activity focus. Am I networking? Am I growing realtors? Am I calling the builders? Am I reaching out to homeowners that told my salesperson no, just to see if is there anything else we could do for you to win the business today? Am I doing every type of activity possible to grow revenue? Is rule number two. And rule number three, Stephen, is to go back to rule number one and rule number two. So that's the first 12 months. Because what we hope and what we should be doing as a franchisor is to give you the playbook, give you the training, give you the knowledge, give you the tools. We should be giving you that process that you, from an operational aspect, there's going to still be things that go wrong, but analyzing why your utilities went up 10% when last month it was $200, I would say go out and sell one more job, and we don't have to talk about this anymore. So, and it's easy for anyone to say inside an office behind a desk everything I just said. And so it comes back to that one core value of our five, execution. Our second core, another core value is winning energy. And it's having that desire to want to win all the time. So hopefully that answered your question. I feel like I may have missed one part of it, but did that help? You might be on mute.
Sorry, I have a bad habit of just hitting
Yeah.
the mic to cut it off. I was just saying, yes, you hit it. The culture, I guess, is you're establishing that. You mentioned it very quickly, and it was a slide. And then the success that people are having is coming from, I guess, the brand itself. You not the
Yep.
brand, but the culture that you're building in and who you're looking for. So
Yep.
you kind of are identifying who you want to be building with, and it is the builders, people that want to go out there and hustle and get it. So, yeah, you answered the
Yep.
question.
Even our 9 KPIs really does focus on a sales mentality. We focus on paid appointments, organic appointments. So the organic is your ability to create the culture to continue to get referrals or build your own appointments. Estimate percentage, that is the number of appointments you go to and just provide an estimate. Most of the time, if you're low on that, I tell our team here is to reach out. Like, do they have the confidence and the education to leave that estimate each and every time? Because the homeowner called them to come to the house. So why would you not leave an estimate? And the only thing I can like think about is like they don't have the education, the confidence, they're missing that component. And with that, then comes a higher close ratio, which is a separate KPI. And even on the close ratio, since we have the time, I heard this from one of our founders in the window treatment space that has a very high close ratio for his business, and he still, as up until almost half of last year, he still was going to appointments. And I did ask him like, what do you do inside your business? He's got 3 other employees to create this high close ratio. And he just said, Tony, like the first third of appointments you go to, you should win. Like a third of the appointments you should win just by showing up on time, actually engaging in conversation and doing what they ask. You should win those appointments. He's like the back third, if you're priced right, you're not the cheapest guy in the market, you're probably going to lose and you should be okay with that. But that middle third, he's like, Tony, that comes down to culture, a willingness to want to win, working with their sales team, improving that process. And so if somebody says he's 34% and believes that he or she's doing a great job, he's like, no, that first third, like that's the layup. what are you doing to capture that second third of the business? It's not an exact science, but it was a way to explain it to me of always wanting to get more out of your people. And it was, and again, he's some months doing pretty high on that deal. What was the on the back of your image there? Unfrazzled entrepreneur. What is that about?
I had a business pre-COVID that was kind of staffing. I was helping maybe mid-tier companies find bottlenecks and then putting teams in place. Um, the COVID took that out because got we were falling on the outsourcing
Yeah,
hatch that came down. Then because I was making good money, I was just moving a lot of that into real estate. At the time, I was working with 80, 90-year-olds doing a lot of interesting things, bifurcating notes, moving mortgages or walk-in
yeah,
mortgages, and but then they started passing. So I just was like in crisis mode, which I've gone through before, just being an entrepreneur. So I wanted to capture this, like going from crisis to getting back on top. But it turned into more of like a therapy session for me, and a lot of people opened up and said a lot of personal things. So I did never launched it, but I have it up there just as a reminder. I was talking to Corey, I believe, earlier, that it
yeah,
was just kind of like the Berkshire half the way. I like that story that Warren Buffett tells, that he bought a textile business and it failed, and he just kind of has that name as the reminder. This is kind of the
yep,
reminder of like, this is the journey. I want to be an unfriends entrepreneur. I've had success to the point where I was able to like put my feet up at the beach and just enjoy the week and not have to be stressed
yep,
out all the time. But I know it's a entrepreneur journey is up and down all the time. So the goal
yep.
is to be unfrazzled entrepreneur, but it's not always what the day to day looks like.
That's awesome. That's good stuff. I'll let you lead the rest of the call then.
Well, I
That's
do
good.
have maybe a question that is future focused.
Yeah,
I would like to own multiple franchises. It
yep,
seems like the horsepower brand is kind of custom for that, where you can like buy into and have the same foundation of.
yep.
For the future growth of, it seemed like you're bringing on the HVAC through Varsity. Are there
Uh-huh.
other tactical acquisitions now that you're going to be launching Howie that makes it? You mentioned like the electrical and the HVAC and those, like that's a
Yep.
natural progression to get into those other businesses. Is there a horsepower focused
Hmm.
5-10 year plan to buy up franchises or start franchises that lend itself to each other and have that be part of the
Yeah,
horsepower growth brand for owners like me? Like if they go, hey, you want to
yeah.
own multiples, this is what we suggest. Start with the window covering, then go to this, and then XYZ or next, or no matter where you start, here's how we can vertically or horizontally integrate you into whatever the next step is.
Cool. I'll answer two parts of that. So within horsepower, we have our target list, and we have the type of industries we want to be in with a high average ticket, unsophisticated models, and there's a list of 5 to 7 different things that we look at from an industry perspective. We also look at share of wallet of looking at just the industry statistics of where people are spending money at the home. Like we want to go into areas that there's high demand. So thinking about plumbing, electrical, we want to be in the garage space one day or in that area of the home. There's a number of target lists and industries we have. In the order in which they come, there is no exact science that we've created at this point. By the time we get to an exact science, we'll probably have filled out the portfolio. Um, but we do have a specific acquisition strategy in terms of how we go about that. In terms of right now, our 10-year target 3-year plan is focused on system wide sales. And today, we believe we can get to those system wide sales ahead of plan just with the 9 brands, including heating and air, launching without adding another brand. And so we do want to continue to add additional brands, but we do not want to do it at the expense of hurting our portfolio and everything that we're doing with our current franchisees. And that's a lessons that we're learning along the way is to make sure when is the right time to get the momentum towards the next brand, that towards the next launch. And so again, we can build an incredible portfolio with just the 9 brands that we have today. We will continue to expand offerings, and we'll be in industries like electrical, plumbing, the garage space, flooring, things like that have average high tickets and are obviously at the home. We'll always be at the home. We'll always build out that portfolio to capture more of that share of wallet within Howie. And then how we fill in the bookend, the back half. There's going to always be smaller type service models or regional, like Radon. mitigation is about 15 states out of the U.S. A reasonable service to offer, but only 15 states. Pool maintenance or pool remodeling or pool installation. We'd love to be in that space, but again, now you're looking at demographic issues or restraints and also regional restraints within that service line. So how we start to tackle those are much longer term, and we got plenty of work ahead of us before we have to think about those. And then for your own perspective, and that this question is common, so I'm glad you asked it. It's asked of our founders, it's asked of our leadership. We call it empire builders within our horsepower system. It's not meant for the majority of people. It's hard, much harder. Entrepreneurship, one business is hard. This isn't like 2 times harder doing the second business. It's like 5 times harder because it's really focused on systems, scales, and processes in your market with team members. What I try to like lead people with are like some things to think about from an actionability that you could do to prepare yourself to look at that second brand or opportunity within horsepower. One is it doesn't have to necessarily be a brand new brand that we launch and you start from scratch. One of the ways that we've seen scale is you're looking to buy an existing brand of one of your peers and it's time for them to exit. And so don't think that it has to be the next electrical when that opens up. You got to be the first one to jump on it because I would first build relationships within your common franchisees across your system, and they may be at a stage or a life event or whatever that they would be open to selling that business to you. I think that that's actually an easier way for most people to step into that second opportunity than launching from scratch. The second thing that I would tell you is I think people will know when Empire Builder is the right time for them when they know they have the right people in place in their current business model, and maybe they've came around to another operating partner that could run the second one. So I think what's going to help you answer that question long term is not going to be us. It's going to be you come across an opportunity of somebody that can operate your existing business that you ran for 2 years, and maybe another opportunity where came across another person that could run the new business. Because once you get to 2, 3 companies, you need operating partners and you need people that are going to care about it as much as you do. So in my personal belief, you need to be willing to give them a level of equity. And then they will start to care like an owner because they are an owner. And I think you could do that at a minority level and make it meaningful and make them act like an owner while providing them a path to a future that goes alongside you. That's how I look at it. Tony Hulbert from Horsepower, we have 5 or less people that have gone down this path. From a support structure, it's not that we're siloed. It's just this brand's going to support you for window treatments. This brand's going to support you for glass. And so then, we don't have this support structure that says for Empire Builders, you get an upgrade and now you get the support from this class. We just don't have that transparency. Like maybe we get there one day, but we don't have a business coach that says, okay, Steven, you want to open up the second brand. We're upgrading you to this business coach. It's hard for us to do that internally at this stage, but that's also something that you have to consider on your end is you're working with 2 different brand teams. Now, should be similar experiences, but it's not going to be the same.
Yeah, and the Z support staff is going to be similar, I would
That would be the
assume.
same.
Yeah.
That would be the exact same.
So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I guess the way that I was looking at it is like you're ramping up 2 of those, so it's probably going to take 3 to 5 years to even get one going, and then kind of start looking at the next. But I think that helps me with my timeline of just like, oh, you can buy a resale,
Yep.
hopefully, I guess, and there is enough opportunities internally where there could possibly be, and you're going to be building those relationships alongside whatever else you're doing, because I'm assuming there's a lot of especially with Howie and everything else that you're doing, there's a lot of cross pollination and cross conversations that you're having
Yeah.
with other brands. So if there is a local in area fencing, and I'm already talking to them, and we've already found good ways to work together, it seems like that's like a layup for a
Yes.
personal acquisition. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. And you going into Gatsby Glass, there is a builder network, and there is opportunity in the builder network for Gatsby Glass. That's not the case in all of our brands. Window treatments, Bumblebee blinds, there's a builder network opportunity there. There's enough margin in both those brands. And so it just depends on the relationships you build over those 3 to 5 years that you mentioned and what makes the most sense. And time will tell when that time comes, but we are open to it. in the short, we are open to having empire builders. We'd love to see it happen within our system.
I appreciate it. I don't want to dominate the call,
Yeah,
so I'll let other people ask.
you did good. Thanks for speaking up. All right, next question.
I, c-
This
I
is
can keep
this is where
going.
you get a little bit of silence. So I try to call out a couple people and see if Tyler Griffith, do you have a question that you'd like to throw out there, or a comment, or anything that you're thinking about, or there we
Uh,
go.
put me on the spot.
Yeah,
Um, no, those were great questions. A lot of what I had in mind. I guess I keyed in on the first question. I need to go back to in some of my like one-on-one meetings and like understand more about the Z services stuff and kind of each one of those. I've jumped on one Z services call so far, but I don't think I fully understand which ones are like fully a part of my brand or which ones aren't. So
yeah, yeah. Good, good. And which brand are you calling for?
Mighty Dog.
Mighty Dog. All right. And what market are you looking at?
West Michigan, Grand Rapids area.
Yep. Awesome. We've had more recently, and more people opening up and looking at Grand Rapids across the brand. So that's interesting. Um, and with respect to Z services, I just want to hit repeat on this is um, a big part of coming to confirmation days. You get to actually meet the leader of each one of those Z services and ask them one-on-one questions at a booth. You also hear them present, um, versus just hearing it through the person you're working through on this process. And we hold those confirmation days for the people early in the process each month. We hold those, and your director advisor can give you those dates. Kevin, you the next one up?
Yeah, how you
All
doing?
right.
Obviously, Kevin, Atlanta area, looking at iPhone. I know it's kind of higher level, so my question is more in line with that. As you look at as I'm doing an investigation, there are other family of brands, right? It's go win the home, all the things that you talk about. So my one question is, at the high level, like how do you guys see you're differentiated from your competition? You also have family of brands out there, and then more specifically the family of brands is great, and I know it drives it for the horsepower brand. But once you get to scale, how do you see Bumblebee Blinds helping iPhone, helping these others at the franchisee level? Me trying to grow an iPhone brand within local market, I guess would be my kind of two questions.
Yeah. So when we look at how we differentiate ourselves, first off is um, there's other portfolio companies out there that are putting different franchise systems into place at different intervals, at different maturities. And from a consumer lens, the key question is Howie is focused at the consumer. So what do they have that is focused at the consumer, and what are they working on where the consumer, if they work with the iPhone first, they can discover Bumblebee Blinds or vice versa. And I'm only familiar with one other company that's out there doing it. And that company, we're just taking a different approach in the sake of horsepower. Our customer is you, Kevin, and everything around horsepower is you. And so when people search SEO perspective and they search franchising in the home service space, we want horsepower to show up. We want the marketing to show up. But when a homeowner searches home service and I need a repair on my AC unit, we don't want horsepower to show up. We want the brand to show up and potentially Howie to show up. And so when we launch Howie and that brand, and we think about SEO, digital marketing, and the branding and components around it, we want it to be very clear as who the consumer is. And the other one I'm familiar with that's trying to do it at a consumer level, their brand name is both the franchisor and also the consumer. In my mind, it doesn't make sense. Marriott is one that has been able to do it. Marriott is technically a franchise system. I don't think a lot of people know it. So the majority of the people in the world know Marriott as a consumer brand and a hotel chain, and we go there for that service, and they're not known as a franchise space. So we've just chosen to separate those two so that we can double down on horsepower and recruit more candidates like yourself to open up new businesses and focus on Howie on that piece. And then the differentiation comes of like I'm truly bought into what we could do locally in the market. I think people oftentimes get too held up on digital because they believe there's this world out there that digital just makes my life completely easy and makes the business just run smooth. I'm telling you, if that was it, there would be a lot more people running towards these spaces and home services and everything business. If you could just turn on uh, digital advertising and your just business just runs, haircuts, whatever the case is. So I'm more excited about Howie in the local market and going to a trade show and actually seeing 8 franchise brands coming together, 8 owners, their sales team, and there's 40 people in that booth talking to homeowners. That's an impactful home and garden show. I'm more excited to think about how Howie gives back in Atlanta and take Alpharetta or whatever area you're looking at. And how do people are busy. So how do they really see the brand? And so if they see 8 brands in Alpharetta attending the American Cancer Society walk, and there's 40 people representing Howie and the brands that are around it, that's impactful. You start to remember it. Or Habitat for Humanity, or name whatever. You could have a golf event, quite literally invite all your friends, and you with 8 different brands, you could host a golf event and give those proceeds back to charity. So just the number of things you could do with Howie in your local community, I don't see that, and maybe I'm just not aware of it. I don't see that being done in a thoughtful sense, and so we're excited to be rolling some of those things out within what we're doing, and we do think it's a differentiator, and we do think we can get ahead of it. And it'll be hard for people to catch up. It starts with the culture. The last thing I'll end with Howie is um, we are funded by our founders, so we are like private equity in terms of the amount of funding that we have behind us. But from the perspective of the growing from 1 or 2 locations on each one of these brands, this is a culture we've created from the beginning where about Howie, you're hearing about it. Everyone's heard about it for the last 18 months. Everyone's eager to see it come to play. So everyone's accepting about the idea of sharing customer lists and sharing customers across brands. These platform companies that have bought brands into the system, that's not necessarily part of that culture. That culture came from if you're part of a 50 brand system that got bought into it from a private equity play, you have your past culture, and now you're coming into this new system and you're saying I got to share my customers for what purpose, and hey, just trust me, we're going to do this together. Like there's some of those elements that we've heard, and you're just asking like across that. I think anyone that is in the home service space within the franchise space, like I got nothing bad to say about any of them. I focus always on what we're doing, but you asked like the specific question, like what are some of the differences? I would pinpoint back to that. But that's not what drives me. Is what they're doing is what drives me is like how to make that consumer journey and that consumer experience like the best in the world. And if I continue to stay focused on that, I'm figuring that the competition is always going to be trying to keep up with us. Um, and then the perspective of like how you reach, did you say you reach scale as an example in iPhone? And meaning you've reached the slice of the pie that you believe you could go get in your market, or what did you mean by that?
Yeah, you kind of answered it with more of the
Okay.
contact and creating a larger Howie brand that multiplies what I'm doing in my local market by the other Howie brands there. That's more the direction I was talking about, and you answered it. So
Okay, cool.
yeah, absolutely.
You did mention scale, so I just want to hit on that just for the people to hear is we do try very hard to look at, and it goes back to share of wallet and look at industries we want to get into and see that there's scale. So you could talk about buying a second brand. I didn't say this when I was speaking with Steven on this, but each one of the brands we're trying to figure out like, are we offering a brand in itself that can scale for 3 to 5 years that Steven mentioned? Because look at just segments: residential, multifamily, commercial. How do you scale just by offering your services across segments? And then look at the services that we're offering, and how do you scale by doing more of the foam spray or fiber or all the different service lines within iPhone. And so just within the product and service offering, how do you scale within the segments: multifamily, residential, and commercial? How do you scale? We truly believe that our brands are designed to take at least 3 to 5 years to reach a point where you think you've captured a slice of the market, because you're never going to have all of it, but you've captured a part of that market share within your brand where you're like, okay, I think that I've reached this plateau. We don't think that that happens for a period of time, because there's always opportunity to continue to reinvest, expand, add more trucks, more service lines, all that good stuff. So I don't know if that was intentional part of your question, but you had mentioned scale, so I wanted to address that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. Corey, did you just come on just to be part of the fun? Or Corey, you got a comment or a question?
No, I'm just listening in. I think this is a great call.
There we go. There we go. Well, I met Corey Williamson, Mr. Shanahan,
Oh,
but I appreciate you attending the call.
Yeah,
I'm always
thank you,
I'm
Tony.
always
Yes. Yeah, thanks, Tony. I did join. Not only is it fun, but I also find it informative, and I appreciate all the questions. So a lot of these questions I have gotten answered already,
Okay.
but
Yep.
yeah, just glad to be here. Thanks.
Good. Let's see if we again, just I want to make sure everyone has their opportunity. I see one going off mute. You're gonna help me with, yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
my name is Tulsi Dijuan. I'm calling from Minnesota, and we're looking at the Stand Strong fencing. And my question is related to the mode of operation, as it is bigly on focusing on subcontracting for services to be completed. And when you're working with a subcontractor, it's something that you don't really have much control on as to the timing for completing the work, and also as it's related to the quality of services that is being done. And also, how do you really, with other competitors out there, how do you really get subcontractor to want to work on your project as opposed to other competitors out there? And how do you even able to locate good contractors? So is there any leading advice on those areas? Thank you.
Yeah, and we're at in Minnesota.
Yes, Minnesota.
We're at though, in Minneapolis, or we're at.
Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so there's 3 points in our question there. Let's start at the last point of how to find subcontractors, and this generally applies to all the brands on this call today. But your brand team would walk you through the strategy on how you go locate subcontractors in your market. But I can tell you the most impactful strategy is to start with the suppliers. And all of our suppliers help and assist us. It's part of, we don't just simply negotiate with our suppliers the best pricing in the market. We do attempt to get regional pricing. We then push for the best pricing. We push for rebates. We push for volume discounts, all those good things. But we're also pushing at the same time, roll out that red carpet. So when you walk in to that distributor location for the first time and it feels unnerving because you've never been there before, and you're the new guy, that they're welcoming you into that facility. And also they're offering those facilities are providing those products to the subcontractor. Oftentimes they're delivering it to the home, or they're putting it on their truck or their equipment, or they know them. And they know them because they do a lot of business with them. So I can tell you from a quality aspect, we haven't experienced a major concern around the quality, because these subcontractors, if they're doing volume through a distributor, they're doing volume because they're doing a level of quality. And so that doesn't become the issue or the concern. It becomes the next piece. And it's not that you don't have control, but it comes back to what I talked about with culture. You can take care of your subcontractors. And I can promise you, if I was a subcontractor, I'm going to work with you more if you do a few things. One, keep me busy, because I got a crew of people, and I don't mind working with you and maybe 2 other people, or just you. If you keep me busy and my crew busy and we're making money and you're taking care of me and you're checking in on me, you're making sure the product and the supplies there, you pay me on the time, you're paying me on the time, and you're good at communicating, all those good things, subcontractors will follow the people that provide them business and take care of them. So they're not like any other employee. We treat our suppliers and vendors here at Horsepower as if they're part of our system. We talk even about intellectual capital, and it's not just intellectual capital is not just our employees, it's our franchisees. They're adding to the value of our system because of the knowledge and experience they're bringing to the system, but it's also our suppliers and vendors. And so we take care of our suppliers and vendors. We want that relationship to be something as a true partnership, and people throw that word out there too often. But if you want to build a partnership, that means that you take care of the people that are helping you in your business. So I do believe that if I was running a business in any one of these brands in any local market, that I could ensure quality is being delivered at the home, and that they're showing up on time, and that they want to work with me, because I'm going to grow the business. I'm going to pay them on time. I'm going to offer them a fair price. I'm not going to beat them up every single time a job gets done on pricing, I'm going to make sure that they're taken care of, and that does work. But I can tell you the easiest answer to the question is, with number of jobs, more subcontractors will work with you. That is not part of our issue across the nation when we think about problems that you can run into. It's about growing sales and growing your business, and that is just something that just naturally comes along with it. And we give you the playbook, we give you the ops manual, we give you the training, we give you the tools, the tricks of how you ensure that you have quality at the project within the job. Sandstrong fencing, fencing itself, you mentioned that you were looking at that brand, is even a little bit of an easier one to do a quality assurance check upon the end of a project. And so your general manager or your operations manager or potentially your salesperson is going to go to that home upon that project being completed of that subcontractor, and you're hopefully going to that home with that subcontractor still on site, and you're doing a walk around with that subcontractor to make sure everything was done towards spec and the homeowner is happy and everyone can shake hands and we can move forward and go on to the next job and the next project. So really, I love the subcontractor options that we have within our brands. It's an advantage. I think it could be something that, even though it might cost a little bit more up front and you may have lower margins, you don't have to own the vehicle, you don't have to own the equipment, you don't have to pay for the person that chooses to go to the convenience store to get food before the job. All the components that happen in managing people to do that project kind of go away in the subcontract world, and you just, but it doesn't alleviate the fact that you still got to take care of them and build that relationship and build that culture and bring them into your system, so they want to work with you, and they're calling you and saying, hey, what's my next week look like? I don't have any jobs on my schedule. Do you have anything for me? And I think people that are successful in our business, they do that well. It's a good question, though, to be thinking about in terms of scaling your business. Well, we have 5 minutes left, so time for one more question, if anyone has it. Lori, Kendall, I see online. Do you two, either one of you, have a question? Luke joined.
I don't have a question. I'm just enjoying the other questions that are being put forward. Thank you.
Good. Well, with that,
I have
I'll give you
curiosity question.
Yeah.
You talked about the horsepower brand being close to private equity. Is this portfolio being built for the future of sale to a private equity or public? Is that part of the game plan? Do you see any major changes if that is the direction that you're trying to head?
Yeah, we get that question often. I can tell you, as we stand today, our last investment that we took on for Horsepower Brands was in December of 2022. So we've built a business that's sustaining itself in the current mode. But it doesn't mean that we won't look for additional investment from our founders. We have a runway with the founders alone where we wouldn't need to pursue that option. There used to be a time to raise 200 million, you needed to go public, and now it's like you could raise $2 billion by going private. So if I had my way on if we needed to raise capital, and there's a number of different ways to raise capital, I don't think that will be an issue, especially as to what we're building. I think we'll have enough people that will want to be a part of this in some way, some fashion, somehow. I try to answer that question to think about it from a different lens, is where would we put additional investments into the future, and it would be towards things like Howie. And when I talk about the Angie and the Carfax idea, we're going to need a lot of smart people. We need a lot of events to occur, a lot of appointments, a lot of home interactions, brand density, franchise density. But when we reach that point where we feel like we've are in a market and have that density of St. Pete, Sarasota, in that area, like that's when investments or capital and putting it towards those initiatives, those would be an area that we'd want to do, or continued investments in expanding our portfolio and capture all those home services. Those are the two key areas where we need outside capital, possibly into the future. Outside that, we just need to continue to take care of our franchisees, our system, and continue to grow this base. And the business will continue to generate enough revenue to support itself. So that's a great question. People oftentimes ask that, and hopefully that gives you some perspective from my seat and for the company. I would like to just end. Going through this is an important decision for yourself. So taking the time to be on these calls, it means a lot to me because it means that you care. It means that you're taking the time to educate yourself to make the best decision. It's not meant to sound cliche. I don't want this to be a sales process. I want this to be an education process. We want you to come to confirmation day, check all the boxes that you can potentially check. I'll tell you, there will never be a time where every question is answered. That's the idea of being an entrepreneur. You're going into this at some point not knowing every answer, but I hope that you get enough answers to the questions that you have to make the best decision. That's with Horsepower. Love to see you be a part of it. If it's not, we hope that you learn something along the way and make the best decision as you guys go forward. So have a good rest of the evening, and thanks again for joining.
Thanks,
See you,
Tony.
Steve. See you, Kevin.